welcome to Ask a Responsive Fundraiser, where we take your questions to a fundraising expert so that ultimately you can grow generosity. Today, we're taking your questions to Barbara O'Reilly. Barbara brings over 30 years of experience at leading nonprofits, including Harvard University, Oxford University, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the American Red Cross. As founder of Windmill Hill Consulting, she and her team help nonprofits develop profitable fundraising strategies, equipping them with the resources, skills, and tactics to strengthen donor relationships and drive revenue growth. Barbara, thanks for taking some time to answer questions today.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump into the first question. It's this.
Mm-hmm.
We've grown our donor base, but our retention is still weak, especially among first-time donors. So how can we adjust our strategy to build stronger connections that lead to long-term donor loyalty?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Donor retention is a problem in the sector, as you well know. The average donor retention rate is like 42%. So that means that on average, nonprofits are losing almost 60% of their donors each and every year. And for first-time donors, that's even worse. So it's on average about 80% of first-time donors are not coming back to make a second gift. So understanding what those metrics are around donor retention is as important as tracking how much money you're raising each and every year. So a couple things to be thinking about. We know that donors will continue to give again and again when they feel connected with the organization, when they feel seen, when they feel like their gift is making a difference. So as you are thinking about how to improve donor retention, take a moment to evaluate how are you communicating with your donors now. Look at your communications calendar. Look at the touch points. Is it just an email, newsletter, and a thank you note, and you consider sort of the check, you're done? If that's the case, then think about other ways that you can maybe do a little bit more personal outreach, provide some other ways to update your donors on the impact of their collective giving, the work that you're doing because of donors. And that could come up, it can be showing up through a personal thank you note or call by you, your staff, your board. That could also show up in smaller, either virtual or in-person update meetings, impact meetings that are small group. And if you do it virtually, most people are so used to that now, and it's a really good way to record it, and then you can send it out to the people who aren't able to join. You could do interviews with those whom you're serving, or some of your staff to provide a quick update. Again, 1 or 2 minute update, you email it out, you text it out, however is the preferred communication. But think about all of those ways that you believe that your donors will connect with your message and your impact and the impact updates, and make it multi-channel. So it isn't just, I've shared a number of examples that are digital, but personal phone calls, personal handwritten notes, those are going to be important as well. And look at this over the trajectory of your 12 months. So are you building this in, and don't consider the newsletter as that's it. That's your update report. We know people aren't necessarily going to open them as hard work as goes into it, but
Right.
we know that there's people will receive information in lots of different ways. So think about that calendar of communications from a one-to-one to a one-to-few to one-to-many over the course of 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful, especially some of those practical suggestions for folks in increasing that donor impact and the impact stories. So that's awesome. All right, question number 2 we're going to get to. It's this. Our board is supportive of fundraising in theory, but they freeze up when it's time to act.
Yep.
So how do you coach board members to find their own fundraising voice, especially those who aren't natural fundraisers?
Yeah. So boards, just across the sector generally have a discomfort with fundraising. And I've seen this in board source studies that have in surveys that have been done over the years, where they ask board members to kind of rate themselves or grade themselves on different aspects of governance and their responsibilities, and how comfortable do they feel or how well do they feel they're doing that. And fundraising is pretty consistently either second to last or last in
Mm.
their comfort and their kind of feelings of success. So this, just accept that, yes, it's a win that the board is ready and wants to do something. That's fantastic. The second part then is understanding, kind of defining what fundraising means. It isn't just asking for money. It is about building relationships that lead to gifts and investments in your organization and mission.
Yep.
So that's kind of like, that's the baseline. Get that common language established, and then work with the board to say, how do we do this? What are the roles that we can play that we feel most comfortable in? And that could be serving as a connector. That could be, I'm going to identify potential funders. Maybe I'll make an introduction, but I'm going to step out of that process. It absolutely, I feel like the two non-negotiable aspects of all of this is making their own gift and being
Yeah.
involved in the stewardship. So
Yep.
I talked about before, for the first question, about making those personal thank you calls. This is a really great way for board members to get connected with the donors who are supporting your work. They could do thank you calls. They might default to do a thank you email. That's fine as a starting point. Encourage them
Sure.
over time to do that thank you call or handwritten note. And I've seen firsthand when board members come back to a board meeting and they say, "Oh my gosh, I was just talking to some of our donors. Let me tell you the things I've just heard." And it
Yeah.
lights them up, it gets them so excited. So that's a really nice way for board members to be involved. And out of all of these different roles, then work with the board to create a menu. I find that is very, very helpful for board members to have a kind of a set list of ideas of ways that they can be involved. And then at the beginning of every year, they can look and say, okay, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to serve in this role. I can be an ambassador by coming to these events or
Mhm.
hosting something or going to an event that's being and representing the organization at another event. So work with the board to identify all the different activities and create a menu that every year they are looking at and checking off items to do. That way, then they're getting involved in that building of donor relationships and stewarding relationships, and they're finding the place that is most comfortable for them, because not
Mm.
everyone is going to be interested or comfortable in making asks. That's totally fine.
Sure.
If you can have one or two who can be involved, that's fantastic. Provide the coaching, the resources, the training, but all in, everybody has a distinct role that they can play, and you want them to be part of that process at all aspects of that donor relationship building.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, question number 3 is this. We've been floating the idea of a capital campaign, but we can't decide if we're ready. So, what should we look for when assessing if our organization is prepared to take on a campaign of that size and complexity?
Yeah, so that's campaigns are not to be entered into lightly. So I love that this organization is thinking about this with great thought and care. Campaigns are a lot of work. They take a lot of planning. They take a lot of resources. And they need to be happening alongside the annual fundraising activities that are happening each and every day. So I would say at the starting point, understand, do you have the right vision for the campaign? So are you launching a campaign because you think you need a little extra money to cover your operating expenses? That's probably not why you need to do a campaign. But
Mhm.
is there a bigger, bolder vision that you know is going to help get your organization to the next level of its mission delivery? Then that becomes a very different kind of idea for what can fuel and spark that campaign. Do you have the right mindset? And I say this because I've seen very often leaders not fully buying into a campaign. They know kind of on paper, or they feel like they need to do a campaign, but they're not bought into it. They
Yeah.
don't they don't have the time, they don't have the belief that it's going to be successful.
Mm,
So making sure that board and staff leaders are fully committed to doing this campaign, because it's going to take a couple of years. So it isn't just a let's do this over the next few months. That would
right.
be great if it was that successful that quickly, but
Sure.
it does take a lot of time. So is everybody fully committed and buying into the vision and the success of this effort? Finally, I would say, do you have the right resources? So do you have the right staff? And if you don't, are you prepared to invest in the staff that you need to manage this campaign? Because it
Mm,
is going to be, and it isn't just that the fundraising staff you have, by the way, because they're doing their everyday job. So you have to have someone who is coordinating with and collaborating with the existing fundraisers you have.
yeah.
That's one. Do you have the right volunteer structure, or do you have the volunteers who are ready and could be invited to serve on a campaign committee? Because it can't. That's an equally important part of that success. Um, and then, do you have the donor audience? So, is your donor audience engaged enough that you can start to ramp up a campaign planning process and involve them, and then set the stage for larger scale solicitations? If the answer, especially to that one, is we don't know, you can start to test it a little bit, maybe do a feasibility study,
Yeah.
or I'd like to call planning studies, to sort of test the waters a little bit, test the messaging, test the resonance and the interest level for your volunteers and your donors to step up in this way. Because if you don't have if the board and the volunteers and the donors ready to engage in this large scale effort, that's probably going to double the length of time that this campaign takes.
Yeah.
And in that case, maybe consider phasing it. So what's like the absolute most important piece of the campaign that that's kind of like you have to get it started now to advance your work in whatever way you envision. So start with that, and I'm not dismissing at all that you still need these components, but it creates like a different momentum and a different it makes it feel maybe a little bit more reachable than a large scale campaign with all the bells and whistles. It's going to take a longer period of time that everyone will feel overwhelmed and deflated and kind of hesitant and scared that they're actually going to be able to be successful.
Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful to give people that place to start and sort of those first few steps and going from there. So thank you for that. Barbara, can you just give people next steps if they want to connect with you further or learn more about Windmill Hill Consulting?
Yes, of course. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, and you can find out more about Windmill Hill at whillconsulting.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being with us today and answering the questions. We so appreciate it.
Oh, delighted to be here. Thanks again for having me, Scott.